Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Gil, and that is not Robyn. We have a co host today. Can you tell us who you are?
Hello, this is Reverend Savannah Noel with you today.
All right. So, lucky for us, we have somebody that was willing to step in. Robyn is under the weather today, and so the show must go on. And, I might have gone a different direction, but my wife in no way would let the show not go on. So here we are going on. Um, so this is Rockin the Love, and we are here as we are every Wednesday, and we will be talking about relationships in some way, shape, or form, because it's all about how we deal with ourselves and with each other in the world. And I think many of us are trying to figure out what that means in this moment. Um, there was kind of a major event that happened, and many of us are feeling very, very something. I mean, I think it varies from person to person, but it's a lot. And how do we show up and be love? How do we love one another? How do we love our world? How do we hold our world accountable? All those are questions that are kind of up. So, Savannah, what's going on? Well, how are you feeling about this whole second era of Trump?
Oh gosh, I don't even know that I've fully come down to earth at this moment. I think, like a lot of people, we're just trying to process and come to terms with and come to some sense of acceptance. I think since probably a few weeks now, I've been completely dysregulated. So I feel like my nervous system is really dysregulated, and it's a time and a moment for inner reflection. It's a time for just taking a pause and stepping back. I mean, I think I have an array of feelings like a lot of people. And I think my intention in just being present here with you all and with you, Gil, is to be fully real and authentic with that, because I don't want to spiritually bypass it and say everything, is great in the way that I'm feeling right now, because it's not. Hey, it's okay. It is okay to fall apart. We have this saying that we say all the time that we have to go through a breakdown to have a breakthrough. So, I think in this moment I'm just grasping.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Thank you. I agree with you. I will just have a reminder. Thank you, New Thought, for chiming in. Still processing, feeling sad and angry. Yes, that's our producer, Michael Mangus, and that is very real for different people. And I want to note that we want to hear from you out there, our listeners. We want to hear your questions, your thoughts, your feelings, um, how we might support you, whatever comes up for you. Please share it with us and let us interact and comment on it. Um, and I will say that I am of the thought that, well, partly because of what Robyn said to me, that she's actually physically experiencing what she's experiencing due to the energy and all the stuff
Yeah.
of the election night. It literally happened while we were on the phone with someone else who was talking about their angst and what was happening, and she started getting sick. You know, so
Yeah.
so it's very real. We all feel it in different ways, and I think we feel the rest of the world in different ways. And I know, Savannah, that you and I and Robyn and Michael, and we all have, this spiritual basis where we work on our lives and work from. But um, this calls us to a new level of living in that.
Mm-hmm.
A new level of, wow, how do I apply this to this? At least that's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel I haven't gotten to that question yet.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just in the shock of it. I woke up this morning completely disillusioned and feeling like I had woken up in a nightmare, and then trying to reconcile and come to terms with how we can be so divided and what that is about, and what are the roots, I'm always into how things connect and what are the roots of all of this. And we saw it in two other elections back in 2016. I think the stakes just felt higher. And party aside, I think that it's asking us to question our very identity as a country, as a culture, as a people. I was talking to a friend of mine, and this is a whole rabbit hole that we don't necessarily have to go down, but I'll just bring it in here. I was talking to a friend of mine about a lot of the time that I spent, in revolution-torn countries. I've spent some time in Egypt after the Arab Spring and saw what that was like to watch a dictator fall, and what happened in the culture. I spent a number of years off and on in Ukraine, a former Soviet country, of having, communism and fascism and all the things. And so I've seen what it does to a people, and I've seen division, separation, and an entire culture seemingly blind. But yet I also have to look at my own bias and judgment around what I think of the other, the othering. And so you're right that it calls us to such a different place. And yet I am so in my grief and my anger and my disbelief that I haven't really made that leap yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like history repeats itself. I saw this and I experienced a similar feeling of how this is so possible. But as I was saying, it's like we have thought of ourselves as a country of a superpower, and I'm starting to question the very existence of our identity and the systemic issues that are continuing to come to the surface for healing and pulling us in the direction I think that ultimately as spiritual people we want to go, but we have to look at the crap.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for that, and we're seeing it in full display, as a mirror, I think, to us. And so then the question is, well, what do I do with that? Knowing that,
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's and then I start to question, like, what the hell are people thinking? That's what are we thinking, really, that we can say, because Trump, like I understand people in Silicon Valley and other places, not all of them, but some people have said, Trump is great for my business. And I think that may be true. Maybe that's true, particularly if you're on the higher end of things. That's probably true. However, how can that override the rest of how we interact in our world? How can that be the only factor? How can I be so selfish and greedy that that's all I look at, and I don't care who it runs over and what happens to them? And I think, how can people do that? And yet, it is something that's interesting. Michael says, at least his neighbor took down his Trump sign this morning. See, there's light at the end of the tunnel here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really tricky about this for me as a minister, as a spiritual person, is that we can come back to principle and look at seeing the light and the divinity in all people, including those we don't agree with. And it's been so polarizing and so difficult to do that, I think, as a spiritual person, but then as a human who has, my values, and I look at my viewpoint is that, supremacy, racism, bigotry, misogyny, white supremacy is what this country was founded on in many ways.
Yep.
And slavery and all those things. And, and I think about that and think, God, I am so privileged that I can actually turn a blind eye to the things that are going on, even if I don't agree with them, even if it supports my business, because I have the privilege to do so. But there are people in this country that don't. And so it's like, where do we walk the line then, as spiritual folks and social activists, supporting a world that works for all people and seeing the divinity in people, and yet at the same time stand for these things that we value of basic human rights? And, I think of it as we have to dismantle all of that. We have to look at the roots of all of that, which is, again, what I was saying before, is the healing that has to happen is the racial divide. Like, I don't know that this country is ready for a woman president, let alone a Black woman president. And I know that's wild to say.
No, it's not wild to say, because in actuality, they aren't. That was proven last night. I mean, And that terrifies me in a certain way, and saddens me more than
Yeah.
terrifies. It's
And it
sad.
means that we have to look at that. I'm like, okay, so what is that? Because if in fact we maintain the status quo of privilege, and it means that I don't have to ever question my identity. I don't have to look at that. I don't have to look at, I mean, we can look at history as a great revealer. You know, we look at the era of the 60s, we look at the Industrial Revolution, we look at the women's, you know, empowerment movement and the vote and all of that, feminism, and we look at, you know, the time of great civil war in this country. And we're at this pivotal moment now, too, where I see that, okay, all this stuff is surfaced for a reason. There's a reason half of the country feels this way. And I have the belief that it has to do with we're not willing to look at the systemic racism or the supremacy that is the thing that has been holding this together in a very dysfunctional way for centuries, because it means that I, as a white person, as a person of privilege, I would have to look at that. And the argument is, well, but this is a capitalistic society. You know, anybody of any walk of life can get what they want and can have the dream. But we just know that that's not true.
Yeah.
We know economics shows us that, and privilege. But I think again, it's just an identity. To me, it's an identity piece of it would ask us to take some ownership, and it took what it took in Germany for them to finally come to terms with, you know, what happened there, and it was devastating. The cost was great, you know, and so I think again, it's all this stuff is coming up to the surface for us to look at it, and I don't even know where to begin to process that, you know, because
Yeah. It's a lot. I know John commented it's honest, and I think he was referring to that we're not ready. The country as a whole is not ready. I think what challenges me in this, and I'll tell you sort of a funny way that it came up for me. Um, we were in line for gas the other day, and there was a guy filling up his truck with gas and had a Trump bumper sticker on the back, and he was an old white guy. And I said to Robyn, well, at least he's not voting against himself. I mean, at least you can kind of see what's going on there. But what I don't get is how people can buy into that when it clearly is shutting them out.
you mean fighting against their own interests?
Their own interests, their own good. They're willing to go for this when it's been stated, you are the enemy.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't
Well,
want you.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I think that history shows, like, socioeconomically, like we can see cultish behaviors. You know, I'm sure there's many the sociologists and people out in the world who can, you know,
Right.
point to how this develops in the human psyche. You know, I think we're much more comfortable in like the fear and all of that stuff. It's familiar, you
Mm-hmm.
know, as opposed to living in the uncertainty of like what could be, you know. I don't know. I think there are tactics, and again, it's really tricky because by saying things like this publicly, then it puts me automatically on one side and
Right.
against the other. And so I think that again, that's part of the work. And yet, how do we reconcile as spiritual people? How do we reconcile and still love the person that we don't agree with?
I think the key is we have to continue in love as much as we can in terms of how we view our neighbor and how we work with them. As Michael says, loving my neighbor has taken on a whole new meaning. Yes, it's true. And and at the same time, we are called to hold the truth of is what is for the good.
Mm-hmm.
What is for the good? We can't ignore, um, going back a ways, the George Floyds and we can't ignore that. And we said that then. We said we couldn't ignore it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're ignoring it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so short in terms of memory, and you know, did you see the ad that said, was highlighting Kamala Harris's old interview about transgender folks and prisons and making
Oh,
services available?
yes, right.
They close it out with, "She's more concerned with they and them than you."
Hmm.
And I'm like, that was it was visceral for me when I heard that. It made me so upset that you would take that and so use that underlying thing. You've totally put the whole list of anybody that's talking about pronouns out to the other side, and we hate you.
Hmm.
You know, I mean,
Hmm.
you're not us. You are not us.
Hmm.
And uh, somehow we have to embrace both.
Right. That's the task.
Yeah,
It's become so divisive and so polarizing. We can't even have the conversations we need to have. Um,
right.
so then it comes back to, for me, and I posted this yesterday on my own socials because I took the day, I wasn't engaged with the news or anything like that, to really get out into nature and to ground and to think to myself, okay, if we can't connect on, or we can't agree on most things, what is it that we can do? And the question that came to me was, well, how can I be of service?
Hmm.
How can I help? What is it that we have in common in terms of our values or the things that we care about? And I think, at this moment, for a lot of us, we have to process what just happened. I mean, this is a huge grief for millions of people, no matter what side, because even if your candidate, won, I'm sure that there's still some challenges, maybe even within your family or the friends that you don't agree with. So now you've got, I mean, there's fractures
Yeah,
all over,
absolutely.
and so then it's like, well, what can I do? And for the people listening and watching, like, I think that's what people are wanting right now, is we can speculate and try to find meaning in all of this, which I know we will have time to do all of that. And right now it's like, well, what can I do right now to calm my nervous system, to know that it's going to be okay, to know that things are going to work out, to and so for me, it's really nature, getting out into nature, reconnecting with the earth, you know, um, finding all the ways that I can to calm my nervous system so that I can actually think clearly and respond rather than react.
Yes, yes. Ah,
Yeah.
so I'm going to say I think that's kind of where we want to go in terms of how do we take care of ourselves, and how do we not become, how do we continue to become what we know, what we want to see? How do we continue to become what we want to see without becoming bitter and angry and all of that stuff? And how do we talk to people and find that common ground? Because I think really what's wanted is the same. It's the understanding of whether this is going to achieve it.
Hmm.
you know it's the understanding of, is this direction going to really achieve that, or is it just going to paint over it, and give the illusion that something's happening good, and the rest of it, eventually it falls apart,
Yeah.
which is kind of the Nazi Germany story.
Mhm.
We pretended that was going to be good and that was going to take care of all the problems. Well, that was craziness.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to suggest that we take a quick break here on Thought Media Network, um, with Rockin the Love. I'm here today with our guest, Reverend Savannah Noel, and our good friend and my wife, Robyn, is out, not feeling particularly well today. So we're giving her a break, and we'll be back right here after your break on New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Good afternoon once again. This is Gil here with Rockin the Love and with my lovely co-host, Reverend Savannah Noel, who, my gosh, I've known since she was just a little baby practically, which is mostly embarrassing for me to say. But anyway, she is here with us, filling in for Robyn and bringing her unique perspective. And what we're talking about is basically how we're feeling around the election and the outcome of that, and what's going on, and how do we move forward, and how do we walk in the world. How do we take care of ourselves so that we can come to the place where we can walk in the world in a positive way?
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's today and the next few days. I'm going to do everything in my power to recalibrate my nervous system, to get into nature, to go for a walk, to turn away from all of the intensity of the news. I think that so many of us, we were glued for weeks. I think we don't really realize how heavy all of that is on our nervous system and just on we know with Robyn, physical health, to really take the power that we're giving all out here and bring it back into here. And, as spiritual people, I do that through, prayer, meditation. Last night I had a moment of just sitting in meditation and, treating for highest and best and what I want to see. And I think, it takes time. We got to process what we're feeling, and then continue to be, for me, it's continuing to be a bright light. It's continuing to take the high road. There's a lot of work to do, clearly.
Yeah. I think what you brought up earlier is kind of this idea that our whole country's been built on the backs of others. The whole way it's been done is to eliminate the people we didn't want, to bring in people that would serve us, to, all those things. And those of us who are more on the privileged side of that have to grapple with how do we really honor that reality, mm-hmm. and allow ourselves to understand where is it that we may be playing into it.
Yes. Like, what is my work here?
Yeah.
and I'm not quite there yet, but what is my role? What can I do? How can I serve? How do I continue to look at my unconscious bias and the ways that I am perpetuating this? And, a lot of people would probably argue, maybe who voted for him, that they're not privileged and that everyone has equal rights, if you live in this country. And I think that's always been the argument. And yet we continue to see the same patterns show up over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, this is continuing to come up, and it's coming up now in even a more massive way, to show us something. And are we paying attention to it? It goes beyond just semantics and policies and rhetoric. I mean, I think it's fundamental to what the country was founded on. And so, in talking with people, my friends up in Canada and people, outside of this country, people are stunned. They don't understand it. They're like, we do not understand. This doesn't make any sense. But to me, it does when we actually look at what, how it all came to be.
Right. Right.
And for us to think we are immune, I mean, again, that is privilege too.
Right. Right. Well, it's okay. We'll live through it. Well, maybe with our privilege, we won't be as damaged by it, but some people will be very damaged by it.
Yeah.
I noticed that we have the comment that Michael says, for his own sanity, he's paused his MAGA friends and family for 30 days on Facebook. And I mean, I think it's not, I hear that, not a mean thing, not a whatever judgment thing. It's just, I don't want to be who I feel like being to you in this moment. So I'm going to take a break and work through it. That's my sense. And then I also want to acknowledge our friend down here, and I'm sorry if I screw up the name, Badre Seban,
awesome.
From Morocco. And thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any particular thoughts or observations about what's happened in America over the last 24 hours, feel free to share that with us. It's interesting to hear and to understand how as a country we're perceived from the outside.
Yeah.
Something
that just came to me as well, and I think it's important to note, and I kind of danced around it and talked a little bit about it, but when stuff like this has happened at this level, I think it's really tempting, instead of being with the discomfort and being with the feelings and allowing ourselves to grieve, and to actually look at it as, oh my gosh, this happened. And, what am I here to discover in it? The temptation, in my own privilege, is to use that as a scapegoat, to hide behind privilege, which I think is something I've probably done most of my life, because it was ingrained, like, oh, well, I don't actually have to worry about it. It doesn't affect me. I mean, I live in a state that is very progressive, and it doesn't affect me, right? And if we think of it in terms of, healing division and the divisiveness and non-separation, we have to look at that as community of like, well, no, it's actually by me not using my privilege to hide, bury my feelings and say, this doesn't affect me very much, that I'm actually not contributing to the world that I want to create.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem too, is that we can say, well, that doesn't affect me. So.
Yeah. A couple of things came up. I was thinking about and forgive me for not knowing the references, but the statement that somebody wrote or wrote about Nazi Germany, about saying, they came for the Jews and I said nothing because it wasn't me. And then, they came for the gays and they came for the Christians and they came for whatever. And when they came for me, there was no one left.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, there's a point at which we can pretend ourselves into a corner, and then really we have allowed whatever this is to become bigger than can be looked at, can be dealt with. And when you're saying that, I mean, that's my sense, is that that's what people have done over time, we'll take the land and we'll do this, and that's fine. It doesn't matter that we killed off 400 Indians in order to do it. That doesn't affect me. I've got a plot of property. I'm growing things. My family's happy, and I'm not trying not to make fun of that, but I think there's a level at which we have all throughout our history, we have compartmentalized in order to make things okay. And those with the privilege to be able to compartmentalize get to do it, and the rest don't.
That's right. I think it would be really telling and interesting to have Dr. Jim Lockhart speak to this in terms of the epigenetics and what is the word that I want? What am I trying to say? The dynamics, the quantum dynamics. What am I trying to say? It's on the tip of my tongue. Throughout history and time, the different places that, what is it?
Wait, who is that? We have an intruder.
That's it. We got
spiral dynamics. Yes.
Spiral dynamics. Yeah, it would be really interesting. Thank you. To see where we are on that spiral right now, because there was. I mean, you'd have to go do the research. We don't have time on this show to do all of that, but it really looks at where we're going in terms of evolutionary consciousness and how the Industrial Revolution pushed us into a new spiral and a new spiral and a new spiral. And this X generation, is also pushing us into another piece of the spiral. This is much more community oriented, much more social cause oriented, much more interested in less of me, mine, and more of we, our, right? And so then when you have those things conflicting, it's like, well, where are we on that? And I just think it would be fascinating to see how that all plays a role into all of this too, in terms of what you just said, because it then puts, instead of looking at how does this impact me? How does this affect me, mine? Then it would force us, then the work would be, how do I do the work on myself to be part of the collective, to do what it is that we're talking about? A world that works for everyone is a collective, right? It's right. Community. It's about interdependence. It's about connection. And I think that would require, at least in this moment, like any small thing, is to have empathy. How do I have empathy even for the people I don't agree with and disagree, and can they have empathy for how I'm feeling right now? I think it starts with that, because we are at this place right now, I think, where we're not even dialoguing.
Right.
Right. We're not even having really essential conversations that could potentially heal the divide and, get us more into that dynamic.
And the message from the top has been, we don't have those conversations. We avoid the question. Every question that has come up around those things has been deflected by candidates, in my humble opinion. And those that try to answer it end up getting criticized for how they answered it, instead of the fact that they did answer it and there was a start. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what our other friend had to say here. We are happy to discuss Morocco's strong friend Trump. Really? Wow.
I don't know.
If you have a friend in Trump, I want to know about it, because here's the reality. I don't know how anybody can. He is the example of someone you cannot trust. He will run over. How many of his people has he run out of his administration before? Who they were great people on Tuesday, and by Thursday, they, since the time they were babies, they were awful. How does that happen? Right? Yeah. And so there's something that draws us to this kind of, almost this John Wayne kind of power. I got the handle on everything. I can do everything. And back to what you were saying, that goes to the me and mine. That's the whole thing. That's me and mine. I can do it. I got it handled. I don't like you. You're gone. And we don't think of, well, how does this bring us together?
Yeah.
How are we going to facilitate movement in a direction that creates a world that could possibly work for more than just me.
Well, and I think that it worked at a time, way back when,
Okay.
capitalism did work for people, where the divide, the rich and the poor, it wasn't so far on two different spectrums, that people actually did have an opportunity. They did have a chance. But when think about it, and think about the disparaging, how many people are disparaged just trying to make a living here, or middle class, like just trying to pay their rent and pay their bills, then that dream seems further and further away. And so the argument has always been, well, it's accessible to everyone. And it's like, yeah, if you're in this percentile,
Right.
you work
Right.
hard. And it's like, it's become to me so much less about that now. Because the gap is so large, it doesn't feel attainable, which is why people, it's like, what is it going to take for us to finally do something? I was talking to someone too about how, not in my generation, at least not in this country, have we really had to fight for, we haven't really had to fight for much. Like I think about the times I've lived in other parts of the world during revolution, and seeing how hard it has been for them to live, and seeing what's at stake for them. And how I remember at the time thinking, oh, I don't have to deal with that. Again, my privilege, I don't have to deal with that. That doesn't happen in my country.
Right.
And yet we see that unfolding now. And I think, again, it calls us back, I think, to what can I do? How can I serve? What can I do? What is it that I need to do to heal the divide? Maybe within myself, within my family, or even in my thinking. How can I rise above this? That's what I'm going to be looking at, I think, over the coming months, is like, how do I not allow this, which feels like a cancer? How do I not allow this to completely take me down and squash my light? We can't afford that. And yeah.
No, we've lived in that place of shadow. It's very interesting. We've been doing a book study at my center with a book called The Abundance Project, and we hit a place, and this book study has been going on for like months. Okay, we started it, and we realized that the book had a lot of stuff in it, so we do 3 pages and 5 pages and stuff like that each week, and then we talk about it, right? So this last week we were on a thing where it was a whole exercise about looking at your shadow self, and where is that, and how does it affect your life? How has it helped you, and how does it now hold you back, and all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. People are like, this is deep, and I have resistance, and we need to take some more time. And they all decided we're going to do this for an hour and a half next week, and be together and support each other and working through questions. And I think that's kind of a sort of a micro thing of what's really happening in the country. Is we've got to look at our shadow.
That's right.
We've got to look at, and that's huge. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
It would require accountability, ownership, the dismantling again of an identity mm-hmm. that we have benefited from and profited from for centuries. And
last week I read an article about the woman who is the director of the Archives Museum, the National Archives Museum in Washington, and there's a whole lot of money going into updating things. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but she and her staff have been accused of whitewashing the archives, and directing people to take out the picture of Martin Luther King, and to take out the pictures from, we're not going to talk about the Japanese internment camps, and taking all of this. And I'm like, holy crud, what are we talking about? That's how long has it taken us to acknowledge some of that? Mm-hmm. And now even what we've acknowledged, we're going to pretend didn't happen.
Right.
But the other thing that I found fascinating was the one piece that was like, well, this is what we've heard from them as to some of the reason why this may be happening. And that is because they're concerned that their displays may anger the Republicans and they lose all their funding, particularly thinking that Trump may become the next president.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I go, I can see that as totally real. At some level, on the practical side, they're going, the museum's going to be gone if we don't pull it back.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to lose it altogether.
Right. So then the cost is what?
Right. What is the cost of that?
Mm-hmm. Again, then it comes back to my morality, my values, my integrity, my livelihood, my survival, me, mine. Again, will my business survive? I'll do whatever it takes, even if I sell out. It still brings all, like you just said. I mean, I think you said it, a collective shadow that we have refused to look at over and over and over again. When we had Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, stuff come up, that too was another pivotal moment where we could have used it for good and for healing, and it didn't. It was more divisive.
Yeah. We closed it up and set it aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think, what do I have control over right now is I have control over my own consciousness and what I contribute and the work I do within myself. I reminded a friend last night that there are good people in this country, and there are good Republicans in this country, and there are good Democrats and good third party, and there are good human beings in this country. And I know you said at the beginning of the hour, tell me something good. Well, I can point to that there are good people who want the values that I know we align with.
And there are good people, I think, that get sucked in too, and don't even realize the gravity of what's going on around them. And to be honest, there's always been, mudslinging and et cetera in our political system, right? There's always been a certain degree of BS that gets delivered around about the others, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the degree to which this is there are so many stories that have been put out that are totally false, and people don't know it. People have heard it, they've heard it again, they've seen it over here, and now it's true.
Yeah.
Or they get information with no context. Maybe the fact is right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell the story.
Right.
Right. And if people get pulled in by that, then we have to somehow, as you said, there are good people. Maybe Trump was right. There's good people on both sides of that demonstration. I don't know. Maybe there was something. Maybe he had an insight in that moment. But how do we not make them wrong and bad? Even if they've aligned themselves with something that to us doesn't make sense.
Right. It's like I attribute it to like living in the Matrix. It feels like we're all living in the Matrix of like what is really real with a capital R and what is really true with a capital T. And how do I when everything settles, how do I come back to that truth with a capital T? Like, right. To me, that's the spiritual work. And I have totally not mastered that. I mean, I told you, I'm so in my feels that I think it will take me a minute to get back to that, to then be able to speak about it. Because ultimately, I think the work is, I don't want to feel judgment. I don't want to feel unforgiveness towards people that I disagree with, even if I think they're crazy, or even if I think they're misaligned, even if I think, oh my God, how could you believe this? There's a reason. And I don't know what that is yet. But maybe that is part of the shadow. If I am you and you are me, it's that whole thing.
Right. Okay. Wow, that's depressing.
No, what?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
But that, yeah, that's really the thing. And how do we do that? And I think it really comes down to partly what you said earlier about acknowledging the ways that I have allowed privilege to give me advantages without being worried about who that might affect. You know, I think the more all of us can be honest about those things, the more permission it gives for anyone else who we may think is, quote, on the other side, to also do the same and to go, yeah, you know, maybe this isn't really okay.
Yeah.
You know, but if I don't acknowledge where I'm not okay, why should I expect anyone else to acknowledge where perhaps they're not okay?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
You know, Marianne Williamson put out a really beautiful statement today that
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I encourage you to watch it and people
Okay.
tuning in, because I really love her talking points. And one of the things she points to and talks about is us really taking the time to look at how we got here. If you're a Democrat, especially, how we got here and how it, you know, the fears around democracy and how, you know, not having a primary affected all of that, you know, and I just, what it brought in me, and maybe this is another angle to really think about, is what if there's a third way? What if there's a different way I need to be looking at this? What if even my very strong opinions and beliefs about my side, my values, what I feel, all of that, my candidate, what if I were able to take a step back and look at it as, well, you know, a third way? Like, maybe there's something I'm not seeing here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's to do our due diligence, really, maybe I'm not seeing everything clearly. That's the whole part of the matrix. Where am I plugged in? Where am I not? What's really true, especially with all the misinformation? I mean, I never thought that I would be living in a country where we would be questioning it to this degree. Like I lived in Ukraine.
Right.
You know, the amount of propaganda and all of that, I never thought it was going to get to this level. And so it really then asks us to go, okay, even if I have my heels dug in around this candidate in my way, and devastation and grief, yes. And what, maybe I need to look at this differently. Like, do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I might be missing.
It's that idea that we get in the place of either or, and where the truth lies is that there are 100 ways, there are 1,000 ways. What am I not? You know, why am I so focused on the one? You know, kind of thing. Yeah. So we have a comment here from Wayne Jones. That's the fragmented. You know Wayne? All right.
Fine, yeah.
The fragmented media that people get sucked into, creating their own bubble. It goes back to
John Donne.
John Donne, I am not familiar with that. In saying no man is, okay, now I'm familiar with it. No man is an island entire of self. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main, which is what we're talking about. You know, we are each other. We are one, and to recognize that for the sake of power, for the sake of money, there are people who would intentionally try to give us reasons to believe we're not.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and also to his point, like we're in our own echo chambers a lot of times with this, which is why when I listened to what Marianne had to say, I was like, okay, you know, in taking ownership and responsibility for where we are now, if I am to do that, then I have to look at it from many different angles, not just my own biased echo chamber of TikTok videos that the algorithm follows for the things that I agree with.
Yeah. Yes.
But if I step outside of my own bubble, I think that's also the disillusionment, to be honest, that a lot of us are feeling, is because we thought, oh yeah, we agree. When in fact, maybe we didn't. Obviously we didn't all agree. Right. And because we're in our own echo chamber and the vacuum, you know, it's hard to see what else is going on out there with other people.
Yeah.
You know? Which proves my point again of more of a reason to have these conversations of vulnerability and empathy, of I may not agree with you, but I can empathize with the fact that you're upset or hurt or depressed or, I can empathize with the fact that we don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And where can we find a neutral point?
Yeah. We all want to get from this place to this place. Why am I wrong if I take the boat and you take the train? I mean, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. Yeah. I'm going to be processing for a while. I really am. And I'm also feeling a real sense of call to, well, as my mother would say, pull your head out. Or would have said, no, doesn't correct that. But to not allow myself to go, I'm good. I have a job. My center's great. These people are nice. I'm going to leave this alone.
Yeah.
And is that really what's calling me?
Right. Yeah. Today I went to a appointment today, and the technician who was working with me said, I'm just so grateful that I live in this state. I'm in Seattle and Washington. And while I know that that's true, and that's great, that's not the truth for all people.
No.
We get, again, that whole privilege thing of like, yeah, I am grateful for that. I'm very grateful for it. And then I wonder about all the others that don't have that, that are terrified right now.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I moved to New Mexico, never lived out of California.
Right.
Years ago. And that same thought went through my mind last night. Thank God I'm in a blue state.
Yeah.
Again,
us and them, and so much work, so much inner work for us.
Whew. Well, so I guess what we leave people with perhaps today is, one, be gentle with yourself. Yes. We're all feeling stuff, and it's okay to feel it. Don't pretend it's not there. And then also, what is it asking of you? Right?
What is mine? Yeah. What is mine to do? How can I help? How can I serve?
Yeah.
And really taking some time to process and to self-care, I happen to live close to the border, so I'm actually going up to Canada to go, which is actually ironic. It's kind of funny. But I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my own mental health, and I think that's what we have to do right now, so that we are, more effective.
Yeah. Well, they've closed the Canadian border, right? Because they're like, we don't want you people. So
they've been preparing, yeah.
But yeah, get out into nature, do the thing that you do. Greet your neighbor, even if they've had a Trump sign in their yard.
So Michael's comments.
So putting up a high fence to block my neighbor isn't an option. Nah, not so much. Not so much. But yeah, greet your neighbor. And no matter what you think, or what they think, or what you may have had out in your yard, it may have been obnoxious to them, allow the natural place of relationships to at least be a starting place. And I think that's all we can do.
Well, and call somebody. I think that's the other piece, is that you don't, I think a lot of people are feeling like, oh my God, I'm not going to be okay, or that I'm alone. You're not alone.
No.
Call a friend, call somebody.
Yeah.
To process, to talk, to listen, to hold space, to cry, whatever you need to do.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because once we do the work, then we get the work, and this is always ongoing, as we know, then we can get some real work done, and be effective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the funny thing, all this focusing inward. Oh, you're not paying attention to the world. Well, I can't really serve the world if I'm not honest about what's going on in me. I can't know how to move in the world.
Good point.
That's where I've come to.
A great
so
point.
Couple more quick comments.
We got that one, I think.
We got that one already. Okay, sorry. Okay, then there's only this one. Thank
Aw,
you.
thank
Very
God.
rich and healing. Thank you, Johnny.
Aw.
Yeah, yeah, we can love someone and be courageous and non-compliant with unethical behavior.
On a good day, I live
And
here.
being open to what that means, even. So, I want to thank you for being with us, Savannah. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thanks for having me. So last minute.
Yes, I know. Tell us, Savannah, we're on in 5 minutes. You ready? So, thank you so much for doing that, being willing to do it. I think we've hit on some really good stuff. Everybody out there, we love you and appreciate you on Rockin the Love. Keep Robyn in your prayers. I'm sure we'll be back next week. And let's all be gentle with ourselves and with all the people we run into.
Yes.
Yep. Have a great day and join us here again next week on Rockin the Love on New Thought Media Network.